Every year, tens of millions of drivers buy a car battery based on one number: cold cranking amps. They assume the number on the label is the number in the battery. They are wrong. Independent cold crank testing has exposed that some of the best-selling batteries in America deliver anywhere from 78 to 95 amps below their labeled rating the moment temperatures hit 0 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not a rounding error. That is a stranded driver on a Tuesday morning in January. Here is the thing. The battery market is quietly split in two: brands that engineer their cold cranking amps to SAE standard and brands that print what sells. The price tag will not tell you which is which. And here is what the auto parts counter will absolutely not tell you. The handheld tester they use to confirm your battery is fine has tolerances wide enough to pass a battery that will fail you on the next cold snap. Smart buyers are now doing what mechanics in northern climates have done for years: checking independent cold crank data and buying the 8 brands that actually deliver. Stick around until the end, because the final brand on this list is the one winter tow truck drivers quietly hate because it never gives them any business. Brand 1, Odyssey by Interstate. While the rest of the battery market chased retail shelf space and printed bigger cold cranking amp numbers to outsell the competitor next to them, Odyssey was still building to pure lead-thin plate tolerances that industrial clients tested with actual instruments. It crossed into the mainstream without diluting a single spec. And get this, pure lead tin plate construction gives Odyssey up to 40% more plate surface area inside the same battery footprint as a standard flooded battery. Independent batch testing confirms delivered cold cranking amps within 2 to 3% of the label at 0 degrees Fahrenheit under SAE standard 30-second cranking load. 3 to 4 year, full replacement warranty. Rated service life up to 10 years. Here is the thing about pure lead plates. They have fundamentally lower internal resistance than the lead alloy plates in conventional batteries. Translation: lower internal resistance equals higher current delivery at cold temperatures, exactly when you need it. Interstate manufactures industrial power systems for aerospace and military. They engineer to a performance floor, not a marketing ceiling. You pay a premium, roughly $160 to $220 depending on group size. And the cold cranking amps on the label are the cold cranking amps you get. Bottom line, this is not a battery, it is a contract. But if you think Odyssey is the only honest cold cranking amp label on the market, wait until you hear what a spiral wound cell can do when it is engineered correctly. Brand 2, Optima Redtop AGM by Clarios. Optima was the original premium AGM name every serious car person trusted in the 90s. A rocky ownership transition in the 2000s introduced quality inconsistencies that sent enthusiasts elsewhere. The current Redtop lineup has stabilized, and independent cold crank testing confirms it is back to earning its reputation with real amps, not nostalgia. The Redtop 34 carries 800 cold cranking amps at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. In Project Farm's independent cold crank test, Optima AGM ranked among the 2 closest batteries to its rated cold cranking amps of every brand tested. And get this, it delivers 15 times the vibration resistance of a conventional flooded battery. The real kicker is the spiral wound cell design. It eliminates loose plate stacking entirely, which means no plate shedding from road vibration, which means internal resistance stays tight across years of use. Translation: you are not just paying for the cold cranking amps you get today. You are paying for the cold cranking amps you still have 3 winters from now. Bottom line, a starter pistol in a blizzard every single time without negotiation. Optima lost its way for a decade, but the spiral wound cell never forgot how to deliver. But Optima earns its premium with a 60-year track record. The next brand earns it by being the one professional mechanics reach for first, for over 70 years. Brand 3, Interstate Batteries. Interstate has been in the battery business since 1952 and has never needed a rebrand or an influencer partnership, because it has never needed to oversell its specs. Here is the thing, mechanics recommend Interstate not because of a co-op advertising deal, but because warranty claims cost them time and money, and Interstate does not generate them. Interstate consistently ranks as the top brand in J.D. Power customer satisfaction surveys for multi-season performance. The Megatron Plus and MTX lines stay close to their labeled cold cranking amp ratings in independent testing. Premium lines carry a 5-year warranty. And because Interstate distributes through independent mechanics rather than big box shelves, stock turns over faster, meaning batteries arrive fresher. That freshness factor is not marketing. Translation: a battery sitting on a warm retail shelf for 8 months has already lost measurable cold cranking amp capacity before you install it. Interstate's distribution channel sidesteps that problem entirely. The real kicker is that the cold cranking amps on the label when you buy it are the cold cranking amps your engine sees that first January morning. Bottom line, not glamorous, not expensive, just relentlessly honest about every amp it claims for over 70 years running. If this is already saving you from a bad battery decision, hit that subscribe button and the like. Because we are just getting to the brands that are going to genuinely shock you. But if Interstate is the mechanic's default, the next brand is what the factory defaults to. Because it was literally tested inside the engine bay it was designed to start. Brand 4, AC Delco Gold. 48, AGM by GM. AC Delco used to be dismissed as an overpriced OEM upsell, but here is where it gets truly interesting. In an era of inflated aftermarket cold cranking amp labels and private label manufacturing games, being the battery actually tested in the car factory has become the most compelling credential in the segment. The AC Delco Gold 48 AGM is General Motors' OEM spec battery, engineered to match precise cold cranking amp requirements for production line testing, not extrapolated from room temperature measurements. The CCA spec represents an engineering floor set by cold start requirements in GM assembly plants in northern climates. 3-year free replacement warranty backed by the largest automaker in North America. Translation: manufactured to OEM tolerance, the cold cranking amp specification is a production requirement, not a sales number. Vent, cap technology, and stamped grid design maintain plate integrity across temperature extremes, directly protecting cold cranking performance over the battery's full service life. Bottom line, built to the same cold start spec as the engine sitting above it, because GM could not afford for either one to lie, not at the factory and not in your driveway. AC Delco earns its credibility through automaker engineering standards. The next brand earned it by surviving the most brutal scrutiny in the consumer market. Consumer Reports lab testing. Brand 5, Die Hard Platinum AGM by Advance Auto Parts. The Die Hard name became a pop culture symbol of reliability in the 1970s. Then decades of product line proliferation, gold, silver, platinum, and everything in between, eroded that trust. The Platinum AGM tier is the brand's genuine attempt to earn it back, and the Consumer Reports data suggests it is working. Consumer Reports measures cold crank voltage retention at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, checking voltage after both 15 and 30 seconds of cranking at half the claimed cold cranking amps. That methodology is specifically designed to catch inflated labels. The Die Hard Platinum was recognized as a reliable performer in that exact metric. 740 cold cranking amps, 115 minutes reserve capacity, 3-year full replacement warranty through Advance Auto Parts. The standard Die Hard Gold line has historically drawn complaints about cold cranking amps not holding after one winter. The Platinum AGM is a fundamentally different product. Stamped grid over expanded metal grid, absorbed glass mat over flooded design. Translation: the Die Hard name alone does not guarantee performance, but the Platinum AGM specification does. Bottom line, the brand that finally put its money where its label is, at least in the Platinum tier. Before we get to brand 6, drop a comment below. Have you ever had a battery that passed the store tester but left you stranded on the coldest morning of the year? Because the next brand is going to explain exactly how that happens and who is responsible. Brand 6, EverStart Platinum AGM from Walmart. Here is the brand nobody expects in this conversation, EverStart from Walmart. In Project Farm's independent cold crank test, the Walmart battery was the single closest brand to its labeled cold cranking amp rating of every battery tested. Not second, not third, first. And get this, EverStart Platinum AGM is manufactured by Johnson Controls, the same production source as several premium aftermarket brands retailing for $50 to $100 more. Rated 810 cold cranking amps, it delivered 766 in the independent freezer test, a gap of just 44 amps, the smallest variance of any brand tested. Retail price, $90 to $120 for group size 48 AGM. The real kicker is the chemistry. Absorbed glass mat construction with calcium-calcium grid technology, identical to premium brands off the same Johnson Controls production floor. Translation: the price difference between EverStart Platinum and the premium brand next to it at the auto parts counter is almost entirely retail margin, not engineering. Here is what the dealerships will absolutely not volunteer. Paying $170 for a premium battery when the $95 Walmart Platinum AGM was built in the same facility to the same spec and delivered closer to its labeled cold cranking amps in independent testing. That is not a smart investment. That is a marketing premium for a sticker. Bottom line, the gold standard of value for cold cranking amps in the entire battery market, as long as you buy the Platinum AGM, not the base EverStart. Brand 7, NorthStar Battery by Interstate. NorthStar is Odyssey's lesser-known sibling, same NSI's parent, lead AGM engineering, but tuned for high-cycling commercial applications where an overstated cold cranking amp rating does not just leave you stranded. It costs someone a contract, a liability claim, or a mission. And get this, independent batch testing of NorthStar's Group 48 and Group 49. AGM units consistently shows delivered cold cranking amps meeting or exceeding the label by 3 to 7%. That margin of over-delivery is essentially unheard of in mainstream retail batteries. Plate tolerances hold through repeated deep discharge cycles, protecting the cold cranking amp rating over the full service life, not just at point of purchase. Here is the thing. NorthStar's core customers, fleet operators, emergency services, military, measure battery performance with actual instruments. Translation: an inflated cold cranking amp label at a NorthStar commercial account is not a marketing problem. It is a lawsuit. That accountability is baked into every unit before it ships. Bottom line, if it can cold start a fleet vehicle in a northern Canadian winter, it has already done harder work than your morning commute. The final brand on this list earns its cold cranking amp credibility from a completely different world. One where a battery that fakes its numbers gets exposed by an oscilloscope before the car even moves. Brand 8, XS Power. AGM XS Power entered the market as a niche brand for competition car audio, an application where current delivery under sustained load is tested in real time, loudly, with instruments running. When Optima's quality wobbled in the mid-2010s, the performance car and high-torque diesel community moved to XS Power, not because of advertising, because the cold cranking amps held up when everything else was being measured. The XS Power D3400 carries 850 cold cranking amps at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, sealed recombinant absorbed glass mat construction, extremely low internal resistance, engineered for any mounting orientation without electrolyte compromise. And get this, it is specified by mechanics on high compression engines and high torque diesel trucks where a weak battery is exposed immediately. A built engine in a Wisconsin January does not give you a second attempt. The real kicker is internal resistance, the hidden number that determines real cold cranking amp delivery at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. XS Power targets it as a primary specification. Translation: low internal resistance means maximum current delivery under the exact cold temperature, high load conditions that expose every other battery's cold cranking amp exaggeration. Competition audio builders who measure with oscilloscopes, not handheld store testers, have trusted it for that reason alone. Bottom line, the gold standard for buyers who test their battery with an oscilloscope, not a prayer. Tow truck drivers in cold climates have never made a dime off. An XS Power install, and that is the only endorsement that matters. The automotive battery market is a battlefield between brands that engineer their cold cranking amps and brands that print what sells. Odyssey, NorthStar, and XS Power were built to industrial standards because their first customers measured everything. On the other side, private label generics, multi-tier brand confusion, and store testers with tolerances wide enough to pass a battery that will betray you in February. Here is the single most important thing you take from this video. Before you buy any battery, ask one question. Has this exact model been independently cold crank tested at 0 degrees Fahrenheit? And how close was the delivered number to the label? If the brand cannot point you to that data, the silence is your answer. The next time you are standing at the auto parts counter in November, you know exactly which brands start your car on the coldest morning of the year, and which ones are just printing confidence on a label. If this saved you from a stranded morning and a $150 tow bill, hit subscribe, because we are just getting started on telling you the truth about what is under the hood in 2026.